Water is higher than folks have ever seen before. The flood's causing an emergency situation north of New York City. That's the situation at the Gilboa Dam. Take a look at this. Earlier, there were a lot of, do we have that? Well, there is the picture of the Gilboa Dam, but apparently it is okay.
Yeah, and you know what Mike was just telling us is that emergency management officials have just reported that this is being overtopped, but that the water is starting at least to recede a little bit in that area. But that is a huge amount of water, and you've got quite a few people that are downstream from there as well.
That is the good news. All right. We're going to get an update on the dam there, the emergency, in just a few minutes. We're going to hear from the county emergency management team straight ahead, so stand by for that.
Well, rescuers working very quickly now, trying to get 21 people out of a motel in upstate New York. They are trapped. The motel, they're located in the very small town of Prattsville. That's only about 10 miles away from the dam that we were just talking about. I mean, this is an area, Greg, that is just inundated at this point. As Irene was pulling out, it just dumped so much water. And then you have that coupled by the situation that they've already been saturated in recent weeks by a lot of rainfall in the month of August already. So one of the hotel guests or motel guests says he woke up to find the waters rising very fast. And he even saw small buildings floating by outside the motel window. The motel was quickly surrounded by water, forcing everybody who was inside, who I understand include some children, up on the second floor. So they're trying to solve that situation at this hour.
Imagine that. Nearly 400,000 New Yorkers who were ordered to evacuate the low-lying neighborhoods can now come home. That's the good news. That is, if they can get there. The nation's largest mass transit system probably will not be ready in time for the Monday morning commute, but overall the city that never sleeps proved that its resilience is once again endearing. Despite some significant damage and serious flooding, communities right outside the city also hit very hard, especially Long Island. Laura Engel is there now. She's live in Long Beach. Laura, New York's Governor Andrew Cuomo just toured the area where you are now. What did he see?
Well, he's certainly got an eyeful, that is for sure. Governor Cuomo's vehicle caravan zigzagged through all of the streets here today in this Long Beach area, a very big section of them where he saw a lot of streets that were turned to rivers from earlier in the day, a lot of toppled trees. That is really the most significant thing that we are seeing here at this hour. Those main routes were turned to rivers earlier this morning when the storm ripped across Long Island. It was, 12 hours ago when we were standing right here on the boardwalk in Long Beach. The surf was so great, the tide was high, and it came rushing in. I'm going to give you a live look right now of what it looks like. You can see a possible silhouette there of a few people who are taking in the view. We've been watching people all day long, inching closer and closer to the hard pounding surf. Not exactly a great idea all day long, but people are getting more brave as we move along. You can see that lifeguard tower that was toppled over on its side. All of that water came rushing up underneath the boardwalk where I am standing right now. It was a huge storm surge that many people, were not welcoming today when it rushed underneath the boardwalk and went out into the parking lots and started flooding the cars. Power, we also want to mention, of course, was knocked out. That has been another big story with the storm out here on Long Island. As many as 460,000 customers, according to the Long Island Power Authority. But really what's happening tonight is getting those trees off of lawns, and we know that that is going to be the story of the day tomorrow all throughout Long Island. Suffolk County also reporting major flooding today, as well as a lot of down power lines, live wires all over the place. Many people still not being allowed back into their neighborhoods in Suffolk County tonight from our last report. Back to you.
All right, Laura, thanks very much in Long Island Beach. Thanks very much.
Well, we are getting a stunning view now. Some new video just coming in showing the extent of the damage done to North Carolina's Outer Banks by Hurricane Irene when it was a hurricane. Now remember, that's the first state to take the brunt of this monster storm. Take a look at this video. Entire roads washed out by the storm surge, carving entire new streams throughout the island. Huge sections of one street now just gone. Several homes, businesses in that area also suffering heavy flood damage. Wow. Well, flooding also a major concern at this hour in Rhode Island after the soaking that state got from Irene. Right now, nearly half the state is without electricity at this hour. Molly Line is live from Newport, Rhode Island, where the winds are whipping. I saw you just a little while ago, and you could barely keep your hood on. I know many people living by flashlight, candlelight, and generator at this hour. Okay, and when it's really windy like that, you'll see that happen. That's a digital signal, and it just goes away. We'll try to come back to her when we can.
Just so people know, they're using satellite trucks out in the field. The sat truck has a dish, and if the wind moves it, you lose the signal.
Yeah, same thing in your house. I mean, if you have satellite at home, you know you either have the picture or you don't.
Right. So we'll get back to Molly Line in a moment. Philadelphia, really trying to weather the wrath of Irene, now battling an even worse problem, potentially epic flooding. Cars and homes washed out, rivers rising to their highest level in 140 years. Earlier, Philadelphia Mayor Michael Nutter said this is just the beginning of the disaster. Take a listen.
For us, at least in the government, the storm is not over just because the rain tapers off or, you know, the clouds start to dissipate. Because we got an estimated 7 to 9 inches of rain. We've had the wettest month in history this August, and so the ground table was already saturated. Nowhere for that water to go.
Well, joining us now on the telephone is Liam O'Keefe, who is Philadelphia's Deputy Managing Director for Emergency Management. Mr. O'Keefe, talk to us about the flooding. How bad is it?
Well, it's a very exciting day starting last evening when we started seeing those forward bands come in. The weather started getting relatively dicey at about 10:30 on, where we first got that tornado warning and we started seeing those heavy rains come down, which resulted in flooding in the local creeks and streams and flash flooding on the roadways. The flooding that we're seeing now, however, is on the Schuylkill River, one of the two large rivers that runs right through the center city core. It was at its highest level since Hurricane Floyd. It's still above flood stage. I believe some of the pictures that you have are those of the homes and businesses immediately adjacent to the Schuylkill River. But the impact has been significant. We're closely watching those waters, waiting for them to recede so that we could go ahead and start the cleanup on that fairly significant stretch of Philadelphia on both sides of the Schuylkill River.
Well, Mr. O'Keefe, how many people have been affected by this? How many people are displaced or out of their homes?
Numerous folks were displaced last night as a result of the flash flooding on the creeks and streams. We've been somewhat fortunate in that there's been a lag with the flooding on the Schuylkill River. Also fortunate in that there aren't too many dwellings immediately adjacent to that river. I think in total we'll probably have close to 1,000 individuals that self-evacuated from areas in the vicinity of the Schuylkill River, including several high-rise buildings.
How many people are without power?
Currently, there's about 11,000 people without power in Philadelphia County. That is down dramatically. Again, we saw the bulk of those power outages early on in the storm, but PECO, our power provider, has done an exceptional job restoring power. They have about 4,000 crew members here in the Philadelphia area, and we're hopeful to get that energy back on, get Philadelphia back in business for tomorrow.
Do you feel like you really escaped a real incredible disaster here?
I think we were anticipating a good amount of rainfall. We were expecting to get between 5 and 9 inches. We did get close to 6 inches. With the water table being as saturated as it was, we expected the flooding to be even more extreme in those creeks and streams. So yes, to a certain extent, we were very fortunate that we didn't see that flooding similar to that of Floyd. But as you could see, the Schuylkill is starting to recede now, and we're going to have a major cleanup effort starting late this evening into tomorrow morning.
Good luck to you, Mr. O'Keefe. Thanks very much. Let's go back north now to New England. We've got Molly Line back after losing her satellite goblins. Molly, you're in Newport, Rhode Island. Talk to us about the damage there. What's happening?
Yeah, well, essentially the biggest thing that authorities are worried about is that power is out to 270,000 people. I'm here on the dark Main Street in Newport, And, the fire department has their emergency generator running, and we're seeing a lot of traffic, but none of the traffic lights are on. So it's a dangerous situation to be out on the roads in. And that's really what the concern is. They're asking people to stay home, to kind of buckle down, and to give the authorities and these electrical crews a chance to get the lights back on in the coming days. National Grid, which is the biggest provider here in the state, believes that it actually will take a couple of days because of the wind. They aren't able to get up the cranes and get to some of those high-level areas and be able to get the power moving along again. So it's going to take a little while. There are some concerns about the high tide, which is hitting about now, and what that can mean for some coastal flooding. That is expected to clear up. The flooding isn't expected to be as bad as these power outages. That's going to be the big challenge when daylight comes tomorrow. Greg?
All right, Molly Line up in Rhode Island. Molly, thanks very much. Harry?
Well, a brand new update now from the National Weather Service on Tropical Storm Irene. The storm has sustained winds of 50 miles per hour. And I'm following on Twitter now. Irene drenches Quebec, 180,000 customers without power. The storm now is moving across our border with Canada and on into that country. Let's get the very latest from Maria Molina, who's live in the Fox Extreme Weather Center. Maria?
Hey, Harris, that's right. So brand new advisory as of 8 a.m. right now. We're putting something out because the battery actually at southern parts of Manhattan in New York City, we actually looked at some record levels of storm surge, or actually high tide levels. So as of 8:42 this morning, we did look at very high levels there. That's something we'll continue to update you on. Otherwise, the center of the storm system as of the 8 p.m. advisory is now about 20 miles to the south of St. Johnsbury in Vermont, and that is continuing to move rapidly to the north-northeast at about 16 miles per hour, actually over 26 miles per hour. So that's something we're keeping an eye on. Otherwise, a band of rain currently stretching into portions of Canada. So most of the heavy rain is now over with. Generally dry conditions to the south and east of the storm, but something that they also did notice is that tropical storm force winds are still gusting across portions to the south and east of the center of the storm system. So New York City, you are still under a tropical storm warning, even though you're not expecting really much additional rainfall. Those winds will continue gusting. And as a matter of fact, JFK did report a wind gust recently in excess of 50 miles per hour. Massachusetts also a report of a wind gust at 67 miles per hour. And the storm guys will continue heading northbound into Canada. And as we head into tonight or into tomorrow, we expect it to no longer be a tropical storm. It's going to become something called an extratropical cyclone, just an area of low pressure over Canada. But look at those winds still holding together, 45 miles per hour sustained by tomorrow.
Yeah, you know what's interesting is you talk about how windy it is here in New York. You saw how windy it was where Molly Line is up in Rhode Island. And then Canada now, up in Quebec, they're already saying that they're seeing windy conditions knock out their electricity. Just how big the storm has remained, even though it's now being downgraded in its strength, it still remains huge. Maria, thank you very much.
All right, flooding getting all too real for one part of New York State. Take a look at this. Concerns that this dam would breach, pouring water into surrounding communities. We're going to hear from emergency management coming up next.